Evening. No, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. No, no idea. It's me just shuffling stuff around everywhere. Yes, slightly late this evening because our usual shower game discussions went on a bit long. That's just me moving headphones around and long wires, which always get tangled up around everything. But it's all good. We're here. We're all in one piece. Okay, so what are we doing? Tasks. That was what we were doing. Let me get rid of my ugly mug. Okay. Yes, that was exactly what it looks like. Oh no, the camera angle is a weird one. It's because the office isn't square. Like it's wider at the front than it is at the back. So the back wall behind me is at an angle compared to the wall that has the camera on it. So it all looks a bit wonky. But yeah, it's because the wall's at an angle. We have a weird shaped garden, so we had to kind of build the shed like as a weird kind of almost like a rhombus shape. Thank you. Claire's just arrived. Look how diddy she is. Look. This is us stood next to each other.
Bye.
You're off again.
Look. Show them how big your cat's getting.
Yeah, look.
Look how big she's getting.
Remember the
now.
kittens? Look at this now. She's huge. She's not very stream friendly though. She's not a cat that will just sit. She likes to move around a lot. Anywho, she... don't know actually. Oh, she's under your chair. We're not even 5 minutes in and I'm already completely distracted.
It's my beauty.
It is. The vision of loveliness that entered the office completely threw me for six. Okay, so on the last stream, we were doing more radio menu stuff. And I went ahead and I fixed the chairs. So here we have a chair, left click to sit. Right out of the way, you. And I can now press F. And I've got the radio menu whilst sat in a chair, so we can do the usual where we can do all the sensor modes and stuff. So that all works whilst seated, which is nice. I also added the prop handling code as well, so you can do the usual prop stuff that you can do whilst walking about, whilst you're sat in a chair. So you can pick things up and you can chuck things whilst seated, which you could never do before because it was using a different system. But that is all unified now. The one biggest change I've had to make is you can no longer jump when you're in a chair. Because before we had spacebar to jump, and of course we need spacebar to get up because obviously F is now used for the radio menu, so we can't do F to get up anymore. So spacebar is now the universal getting up key. But that's right, we don't need to jump in chairs anyway. It was only a silly thing that we added. So we can live without that. Look, branded mug tonight as well. Probably not. Let's see. Can we? No. I'm not sure that I added any interaction code to the camera. I think the only thing it could do was open doors. Yeah, so you can interact with the world using the flying camera, but you can't like pick things up and move them around, because ultimately it is supposed to be for filming machinima and stuff. So that's that. What else did I do? I think that was about it. Oh, I need to fix the captain thing, and I need to fix this not summoning the first time. I don't know what is causing it. So if I get in the chair a couple of times, and now I can summon an NPC. And I don't know why getting in the chair and getting out of it makes a difference, but it does. And I need to hook up the menu options for captain as well, because right now once they're sat you can't get rid of them. So that needs sorting. But yes, everything else should be completely working. So we can do all the stuff we could do before, we can do surveys, we can target things, and we should also, actually let's just double check for sure, we should be able to target something whilst sat in a chair. In fact, I believe that, was it Delta, was it you that raised a bug saying that you couldn't interact this whilst sat in a chair? But yes, you now can. And you can also then use her as well to do stuff. So we go back to long range, target a star, and we should be able to focus on that, and then conduct a survey.
Initiating long range survey.
Yeah, so I was able to do all of that while seated, so fixed it, which is always good. The GeForce Now demo is the same as the public demo, so it doesn't have any of the stuff I'm working on right now. Once we've got this polished, then this will be going out on the public demo, which will also be on the GeForce Now demo. So we'll be updating the public demos periodically throughout the year. We don't have a set schedule for that. It's just going to be as and when it gets to a point where things feel like they've progressed in a decent way, and it's at a point where it's nicely polished, then we'll just update the demo, just to keep the demo kind of current as much as we can. But generally it's going to be every 3 to 6 months or something like that. Right, so with all of that, what we need to work on tonight is the orders option, so that we can start giving the bridge a command as a whole to go and do a specific job, like explore a star system. And again, like everything else, it needs to be context aware. So we've got some screens here. So this one was, right, so this is our shipwide orders, which we need to raise. And then this one, that was the science one, so we don't want that, we want bridge. Because since we set all this up with all the different jobs boards, we changed it so that the bridge was a department in its own right. So helm tasks and sensor tasks should all appear on the bridge jobs board. Whereas the ship-wide jobs board, this one, that should show the overall mission objectives. So what we want to do is inject into this system when we create that task. And as it's been a few weeks since I last looked at it, I've completely forgotten what I did last time, so I'll have to review that a little bit. Jack, that's amazing, thank you. The initial release will be free, so you won't even need to gift it, you can just send them our way. Right, let's just make sure that these guys are still doing their task stuff, because if the task system itself is broken, that's no good to us. So let's just make sure that, so they're generating a task, so they should go back to the table. This person should bring them a drink, and upon delivery of the drink, the task should go away, which it does. So the task board is working, which is nice. I don't think we had a duplicate of that anywhere. No, we didn't. So, okay, so they are working as intended. Is that our overall task manager? Yeah. So we need to inject into this task manager here, so that the jobs like we see here being raised for a steward's task, we need to start seeing those tasks raised on here for our bridge stuff. So what we need to do is when we go to orders and we say explore this star system, and we need two contexts there, so we need explore the star system that is currently selected on the holo display, but also if you're in a star system, you need to be able to say, you know, explore this star system, the one that we're in. So when you click the option on the radial menu, it should create the global task on here, which would then generate subtasks for the bridge crew, which will be appearing and disappearing as those tasks are being addressed and dealt with. And that should keep happening on the bridge tasks until the overall objective is flagged as being complete for a ship-wide task, in which case the whole thing should clear off, and we should be at a state where the objective has been completed. Fingers crossed. Anyway, that's the goal. And again, you know, the idea here. Oh, don't want to summon an NPC. The idea here is that, you know, whilst you're sat in the captain's chair, you should be able to do everything while sat in the chair. So you shouldn't need to get up. So you should be able to say, right, that system there, that's my command target. Obviously, you can just unlock them out. Oh, that's interesting. Why? Bug. Okay, so if you're holding down E whilst you're sat in a chair, it's bringing up the radial menu, which we don't want. Okay, I'll fix that. But yeah, just left clicking does the same thing, and then we can say focus on our target. So there we go, and then we can say, right, let's go there. So navigate to my target. So now the helm is going to navigate to the planet that we've targeted in that system. So I did all of that without having to get out of the captain's chair. Obviously, the menu's a bit far away over here, so, or the UI display rather. So it works better if you're physically up on your feet, walking around the holo display. But yeah, that's our goal. So I guess the first thing we need is our radial menu, and then we'll start building up those various command options. I think, can't remember now where I was defining the defaults. Thank you, Nevercloud. Yeah, it's funny, over the past 6 months, because I think these last 3 updates we're kind of doing at once at the moment, and it's taken us about 6 months to get to this point. And I kind of sit down and I think, what have I actually done in 6 months? And it doesn't feel like much at all, but Claire just put out a Steam update for the past 6 months worth of work, and it's huge. There's so much stuff on there. So it just goes to show that, you know, you might not think you've done much in 6 months, but if you actually write it all down, it turns into a huge list. So right now the planets don't have a physics component, which is why you can fly through them. That will be changing when I go through after this demo update and replace the planets with the new system that we used for the potatoes. So back on some previous streams, we have some potatoes that are spawning and bouncing off of the ship, which we were using as a proxy for asteroids. But that system is much more efficient at positioning things in space, and we need to move the planets over to that same system. But to do that, we kind of need to strip out the way the planets work currently, and I don't want to strip anything out right before we're going for a demo update. So that's on hold. But once we have the physics like sphere for that planet, then when you're in sublight mode, you will bounce off of what will essentially be an atmospheric bubble around the planet, because obviously the main ship can't land, so you'll just bounce off. When it comes to FTL, because we're not moving the ship with physics, there is no physics calculations going on. Obviously, we're moving the ship at thousands of kilometers per second, and you can't calculate physics collisions at thousands of kilometers per second. It just, no physics engine's kind of capable of that. So what we're going to have to do instead is we're going to have the ship's computer calculate a cone essentially as to where the edges of the planet are, and then navigate the ship around where that cone intersects. So we're going to have to do it with math. So the ship on autopilot knows that there's something in the way and it needs to steer around it. If you purposefully fly at a planet manually with the FTL, then we're going to have some kind of automatic FTL shutdown where it just immediately dumps the energy from the coils, stops the ship, and incurs some kind of damage. Because we can't have the ship physically detect where the planet is. We need to do it logically through math. So it's we'll get that. We'll get to that point. But yeah, it's one of the many things on the to-do list, and I imagine we'll probably do that when we do all the sublight stuff. We've got sublight tested and working on the Caravella, our other ship, but all that needs to be ported across to the Magellan, and we need to make sure that it's smooth and flyable and nice before we kind of go live with it. Yeah, I'm sure we could plow holes through planets. The way I kind of approached it by law is that the general consideration with an FTL field is that small particles will get basically either stuck on the front of the field, and you'll build up this ball of energy as you're FTLing through space, and then when you immediately shut the field down, this built up energy will fire forwards like a death beam from hell and destroy the thing that you're flying towards. That's one working theory, and the other working theory is that particulate matter travels around the field and simply gets ejected behind you as you're going along. So I think we'll go with the latter approach. Again, this is all theoretical physics, so no one knows for sure. But we'll go with the particles just basically get pulled around the field as you go. You kind of slip between them. But there has to be some upper limit as to how big an object can be before the field is capable of moving that amount of mass and kind of disintegrating it and moving it around the field. So we'll probably go with something like if the object that you're hitting is of a similar scale to the field itself, then the field is not capable of disintegrating whatever that thing is, and you will just collapse the field and plow into it and blow up. So things like planets and asteroids and moons, you cannot FTL through those things. It won't just plow a hole through it. It will just collapse the field and everyone will die. Yeah, we'll definitely have overrides for that thing. So if you are intent on flying into a planet at FTL, then we'll make that a possibility, but it will be a game over screen, because that is basically the destruction of the ship and crew. Right, so this is where we're defining our radial menu, and it's the orders one that we are specifically interested in. So when constructing this, we were using this include boolean to decide whether or not to actually include the option when building the menu, so that we can, if you're not in a command position, not have access to command orders. It's all very rough at the moment, so we'll have to expand upon that as we go. But I think the first thing we need to do is set the alert conditions as their own subfolder. So if we duplicate those a minute, get rid of them, just change this. So when it comes to some of these orders, again, this radial menu is the proxy for you as the person on the ship speaking out loud to the bridge. So you're saying, like, red alert, you're just saying it out loud to the bridge, so someone has to respond to that. So when we fire this command, then obviously we need something to respond to that and actually set the ship to red alert. And I think initially we'll just probably have the ship's computer doing that, in this instance anyway. I guess we'll do these the opposite way around. We won't be calling them red alert and yellow alert as we go forwards. We will have things like general quarters and other alert stations which are more specific. So things like, well, I guess general quarters is basically your combat readiness, but we'll also have things like fires aboard the ship, and that sort of thing will have different alert states associated with them. But for now, whilst we're still building it, we'll just go yellow alert, red alert, just to keep it simple. I guess we're going to need another channel for this. Actually, we can stick it in the captain channel, can't we? Or shall we stick it in... Let's give Ava her own channel. Oops, let's make it first, that would help, wouldn't it? Okay, so this broadcast channel is essentially going to be everything that the ship's computer will be handling. And I guess the obvious one would be just alert condition, because there's going to be a few different ones. I'm trying to keep this as generic as I can. Because we'll have things like lighting controls and other kind of situational things where you can just speak to the ship's computer. A lot of it will be in crew quarters, like you can turn the lights on and off, you can change the lighting hues, just general flavor stuff as opposed to game specific stuff. Right, so our channel is going to be alert condition. Yeah, we definitely want some actions to be carried out on the basis of changing an alert condition. So these are going to be some of the things that we'll put on the shipwide order system. So if you call, say, red alert or general quarters, then the ship needs to be configured a certain way and people need to be in certain places. So we need to make sure that tasks get raised for NPCs to go and actually set those things up. So during general quarters, for example, things like bulkheads need to be closed, because if the ship is taking damage, we want to make sure that all the pressure doors are closed around the ship. So someone needs to do that, and there needs to be an NPC in charge of doing that. So probably the internal security guy, or maybe the environmental control guy will do that. But an action will need to be created to make sure that happens. Probably things in engineering as well. There'll be things like raising shields, adjusting power profiles, making sure the weapons get charged. There's probably a whole slew of things which need to happen to get the ship combat ready. So again, there'll be multiple tasks being raised for multiple different NPCs, so they can all scurry off and set those things up. And then we need some kind of monitoring board, so we can see like green ticks appearing as each section's ready for that alert condition. So it's not as simple as saying red alert. Obviously the ship then needs to prepare for red alert. It's not an instant thing that just happens. Let's stick these as an Ava action. So these are the just the strings that we broadcast to various systems, so that they know that these things need setting up. So in this instance, this would be on our game state, because that's where we're controlling our alert conditions. So this one is a sub-menu, which means we don't need a channel or an action ID. It does need to remain open, and we don't need to refresh anything. Okay, and then our game state. Where are we? There we are. So we've got that's our chat. That's our error messages. I'm not sure I actually set up a listener for this. Our game state is in desperate need of tidying up. Right, so that's our exploration data. That's our sensor state file. Essentially anything that we want available to all the different game systems in multiplayer. We store those things on game state so that it's accessible. Yeah, that just sets up those, so that's fine. They can go there. That's all our multiplayer chat stuff that we made a few streams back. going to collapse all of that into a single node just to keep it tidy. Make sure it's all still connected up. Blah blah blah, all good. Grab a copy of that because we're going to need it. Okay, so we want to start listening on our alert condition channel. So we're going to need to be listening on lots of different channels depending on what it is we're doing. So in this particular one, we're going to use this. So I'm not sure whether this one's actually used now, actually, saying that. Going to follow that through from the button on the bridge, just so that we're making sure we're firing the right events. Because when we intercept the broadcast, we want to make sure that things like this get fired properly, so it works in multiplayer. Yes, Friday is in fact actually Friday today. And every stream will be a random Friday stream until this update goes out live. Because, yeah, we're way further behind than I wanted to be. So I don't want to work on other stuff until all this is done. Even if it's just 4 hours of an evening. It's I tend to make things which break other things, so it's best just to not touch stuff. And work on the patch stuff until the patch is ready. Claire loves it when I touch stuff and break it. Right, so we are firing alert condition changed on the player controller, which is turning that into a server authoritative action. Yeah, on that, it's probably better if we move this to the player controller as opposed to keeping it on game state specifically. Because then we can trigger the event on player controller, and then on the back of that we can fire this, and then just give it the correct integer. Obviously at some point I'll replace this with strings to make it easier to keep track of. Yeah, and then we're firing that on game state, which must mean therefore that that is not even used anymore. So I'm just going to do a game condition thing on game state. Because I don't think this is going to fire at any point, but just in case, we'll set up a debug message for it. So if it does fire from anything, that we'll know that that is in fact still being used. But I think all that can get deleted because we're doing it from here instead. So this is back from before we were using global events and stuff. We were still using the event dispatchers, which is the old way of doing it. Yes, definitely time for brown alert. I agree. Right, so let's add this to our startup. So we go through a gated startup. So now that we're using the message subsystem, obviously we're using it a lot. So once... Yeah, so I would normally tie that into the character being ready. Because... and unless we're loading the alert state as part of our save game, and I guess at some point it's going to need to be. So yeah, so if we do that on Galaxy Ready, you know, we'll do it on ship ready because once the ship is ready, then we know that all the lights have power, everything's loaded. So when we send a message for our alert condition, we need to make sure that we are when we send that out to change the light's color and everything, we need to make sure that all the lights are present, all the lights are powered, and we know that once this message is broadcast, as in the ship is ready, we know that everything's powered, everything's on. So we don't want to start listening for these events until we know the ship is powered. So we'll use that as our gating for this. So yeah, so once the ship is powered, we'll start listening for our alert conditions. This is probably going to grow quite a lot as we start listening for different things. So this will all need restructuring at some point, but for now we'll just dump it on there. So on message received, we are going to fire wherever the event was for our alert condition. Which one was it? I think it was alert condition changed. Yeah, that one. So we can fire the server version because we are the player controller. So alert condition changed, server, and then we just need to make sure that we give it a payload that has that integer value. So we're going to need a struct that contains that payload. And we shall call it struct alert condition, and just needs to be an integer. Yep, that'll do. And then when we do the broadcast, which we will do from menu. Where's that gone? Yeah, so we need to process. Hang on, because we're sending this, and it's going out on that channel. So when that is received, actually, we need right. We won't need that other struct actually, because we need struct string. I'm sure I had a string payload. Must have got rid of it and replaced it with that dummy payload one. Alright, we'll change that. You just follow through a sec. So we're sending on that channel. There's our action ID. Right, yeah, and that's going to get broadcast via game states because we fire that, which gives us our action ID and our channel. Right, yeah, and then we're going to need to add our channel for Ava on there as well. So yeah, so when we send command order on the player controller, that's our command target, that's our command order. Yeah, so we're going to have to break out of this. Because when we step through from clicking through from the radial menu, the radial menu fires this, which of course gives us our channel and our action ID. So that's coming from here basically. So we're giving it a channel and an action ID, and that comes through here, and then that gets broadcast out there. So either we broadcast that through to the player controller just as a command order, and we do the breakout from here, so we can switch on string without actually broadcasting it out anywhere. And ultimately all we're doing then is we are just firing our alert condition changed from here. I'll have to come back to that one. In fact, let's grab this and move it out of the way a minute, because we're going to do a bunch to that. So as with all things in coding, there's always like 10 ways of achieving something, but always one best way. So we just need to make sure that we're doing this as efficiently as we can. So the easy way to do it would simply be to connect up that channel to here, broadcast that to here, and then if we were to switch on our string, then the default action will be to broadcast that out. But if we have any of these ones, then we can handle those separately. Yeah, there's no way of flagging easily whether or not to handle it by way of a broadcast or not. So we'd have to do So that's our normal pass through there. And then for these ones, we would have to do alert condition changed server. And then we'd have to give them the relevant integers, whichever they are. I think I wrote them down on game state. Yeah, so 0 is condition normal, 1's yellow, 2 is red, and those are our test modes. Now doing it like this works, but it potentially, depending on the amount of things we specifically want to intercept on the player controller, it could bloat this quite considerably. But I guess we'll have to keep reassessing our approach as we build out the radial menu and as we add more stuff to it. So if this list of strings gets huge, then we need to rethink how we do this so it's slightly more efficient. But as a brute force approach, this should work. So let's just give that a test and see whether it does or not. Before I do though, we can go ahead and get rid of this, because we don't need to listen on that broadcast channel anymore. So because we're intercepting our action ID, it's going to skip sending out any broadcast on that channel, but we can still use that broadcast channel as just a way of separating those payloads from the rest of them. So on here, way too many tabs open. So on here, if at some point in the future we want to handle Ava commands separately, we can just break that link there and then handle Ava stuff independently, because we're already using a separate channel for it. It gives us that flexibility in the future, but for now we can just lump it into the rest of them. To be honest, we could do with having 2 channels that we're tracking. So the first channel is obviously the category, so bridge commands. So rather than having to write each one out separately, we just have a single pin for bridge commands, and then we do another switch within a subgraph where we actually go and delve deeper as to like which bridge station are we talking about. So we can clean it up that way as well. So similarly, we just have an Ava category and then the subcategory for the actual commands themselves. Hey Jim, good to see you. Okay, so before I use the radial menu, let's just make sure that these do indeed work, which they do. So we should now be able to go into alert condition and then pick an alert condition, which seems to be working fine. Yep. Great, so all of that all lined up nicely. Okay, so with that then, the next thing we need to do is going back through all of this. So if we collapse that to alert conditions. Okay. So I suppose the next one would be either bridge commands or shipwide orders specifically. I suppose shipwide orders would be the most pertinent one. So I guess we'll stick this on the captain channel. Maybe. Because the XO is also going to have the ability to do this, so I'm wondering whether or not we make a separate channel for those. I think we will actually. So we'll give ourselves a shipwide channel on there. Okay, so this is our sub-menu, so we don't have an action ID. We don't want to refresh anything. We're including by default. And we do want to remain open. So I guess we want explore local, explore current location, so it's an action and it's a shipwide order. Actually, to be honest, that's irrelevant on there. We don't need a channel on our category. So shipwide, explore current. And then explore command target. Because we've got obviously the system that you're currently in, so if you're in a system you can just set them off to explore the whole thing, or if you've got something targeted on the long range sensors, then you can explore that system. There is a third option here, which is if you're on the long range sensors and you're focusing on a star system, then obviously you still have the command target as that star system, but your current sensor mode is focusing on that star system, so you're looking at the orrery map, which means the thing that you might have targeted could be a planet within that system, but you still want the ship to explore the whole star system, even though you might have a planet in that system targeted. So we need to cater for that scenario as well. Obviously, if you're already in a system, that one's nice and easy. And if you're targeting the star itself, that's nice and easy. It might be the case that we just have the single option on there. And we handle the logic behind that once you choose that option. So the logic further down the line can decide the relevance of the command. Like, are you just looking at a star, or are you looking at a focused system on the sensors? In which case, the system will just assume that you want to explore that whole system. Yeah, I mean, there could be an argument could be made for the need. If you do a long range scan on a star system, and you see that there is a terrestrial world within the habitable zone, you may not care about the whole system as a whole. You only care about that particular target. It might be an Earth-like world. So I guess you'll want to send the ship to scan that target specifically. So we do need to differentiate between exploring the whole system and exploring just fully scanning a planet within that system from a distance, from long range. Obviously, the intended gameplay loop is for the ship to remain stationary whilst you do long range surveys of multiple star systems, looking for one to actually go towards and fully explore. So we need to make sure we cater for that with this. And it's better that we keep this as location rather than system, because you might not be in a star system. Yeah, so that one I think we're happy with. This is the slightly confusing one. And also, actually, while I think on it, oops, we do need the cancel orders one. Cancel current orders. One of the thing that I know Claire's been moaning about is once you set them off to do something, you can't then stop them. There's no cancel that option. They will just keep fighting you until they've done their job. So it would be nice to say, actually, no, stop what you're doing. Okay, so the other things that will be on this menu, I suppose more specifically this menu, this is going to be things like refuel the ship and other ship-wide functions that are needed. I guess we need to roll sending probes into this as well at some point. Very true, AJ. They'll fight you trying to do their job. Let's just tidy this up a minute. Yeah, things like that are something that we're going to have to do the logic for. So that if you issue a contradicting order, then we need to make sure that the NPC crew only act upon the most recent thing that you've told them to do. So in that example, if you've told them to take the ship back home to Earth, and then you tell them to stop, from the NPC's perspective, they need to make sure, okay, well, we're not going to go into Earth anymore. We've been told to stop, so stop trying to go to Earth. Luckily, in the current scenario, when you tell them to go to Earth, they target Earth, fire up the engines, and then forget about it. They'll just autopilot all the way there. So if you walk up to the console and just stop the ship, they won't continue trying to get back to Earth. So that's part of what we're doing tonight, is making that command to take the ship back to Earth an actual command, so that if you run up to the NPC and press all the buttons on their console, they need to undo what you've done and then continue the journey back to Earth, because the last thing they were told is take the ship back home to Earth. So you need to actually cancel that order before they'll stop trying to do that, because we want to make sure that the NPCs are robust, and messing them around won't stop them from doing their job. Because what we don't want to happen is that there's an order in the queue somewhere for taking the ship back home to Earth, but because you've pressed all the buttons on their console, they now don't know what they're doing. So we need to build in some resilience to make sure that you can mess them around, but they can recover from that and continue, trying to do their job. They should do, Jim, and I'm sure in the future we'll have to make sure that they do get huffy with you if you keep messing them around. We need them to say, will you just stop pressing the buttons on my console? Jesus. Get them really huffy. That would be quite cool, actually, to see them just getting annoyed. And yeah, so if the ship... Well, see, that's an interesting one. So if the ship is running low on fuel, then obviously the person flying the ship needs to make whoever's in charge aware of that fact, but still continue the mission, because we don't want the NPCs acting autonomously if that's not what the commander wants. So if the order is fly us back home to Earth, and as captain you want the ship to just get as close as it can on its current fuel load, then what you don't want is the NPCs taking it upon themselves to go and refuel the ship when you didn't ask them to. So I think we just need to have it so that they might pause what they're doing, maybe stop the ship, speak to the captain and say, we're running low on fuel, do you want us to continue, or shall we go and refuel? And just give the captain the option to say no, carry on, on our way. Maybe refuel later when we're a bit closer to our target. So we always make sure that whoever's in charge has the final decision on things. Yeah, exactly. Right, so there's a couple of things we need to do now. We're going to be broadcasting out these action IDs, and we need to convert these action IDs into actual actionable orders on our task manager system. So the first thing we need to do is on our event graph here. We need to make sure that we add our shipwide orders onto here, and I think we will process these separately. So right now on here we're just sending literally just that to our player controller. In fact, let's copy that a minute. So I think what we'll do instead is, I guess we'll still send this through to the player controller. I'm just wondering, actually, whether or not we switch on our channel rather than a string. So we've got our alert condition 1, and then we can actually do our switch from there to handle those ones. Then we can collapse that, and then we can also do our shipwide commands and then handle them separately. And then our default is still just going to be broadcasted out, but at least we're actually processing individual channels now rather than just our strings. Speaking of, no, it wasn't that one, was it? Where was I making those? It was in that function. Those. Right, just keeps that nice and neat. And then we'll do the same for our shipwide commands, so that so all the things that we're dealing with as the server. So we're making sure that all these commands arrive at the player controller as a client action, but they get processed as a server action, just to make sure that they work properly in multiplayer and are properly handled. Sounds awkward, Jason. Right, so here's the fun bit then. Well, I guess actually, if we're going to do the breakout here and handle it on the player controller, then from the perspective of our character, we don't actually need to handle that separately. It can just go, it can go into there. And I am wondering whether we just make that our default action. We could save a lot of messing about if we do that. Makes that cleaner. So Yeah, so we don't need to bother adding the tags on there unless we're going to handle them separately. Otherwise, our default action is literally just to send them to player controller. And I think because that is such a simple action, there is no real value in having a collapsed node for that. So for the sake of seeing what we're doing, we may as well just do that. And then tidy that up because I like tidy blueprints. Okay. Much simpler. Okay, so if we're not dealing with it separately, just send it over to the player controller and let the player controller worry about it. And we'll need to do the same thing on the chairs. In fact, I'm going to do that now while I remember. Otherwise, I will forget, and then the chairs won't work. I'm looking forward to not having to do this on the chairs anymore. So rather than having the chairs process a lot of the interaction stuff and basically all the stuff the player character does, we'll have them just be chairs, and then we'll attach the player pawn to the chair, and then treat the chair as a true vehicle with the player pawn as a passenger, rather than possessing the chair and treating the chair as a character, which is a suboptimal way of doing it. Right, okay, so that's that sorted. Right, so now we need to do this bit. So, do we have a reference to our orders manager? No, we don't. Okay, so we need to make sure we only do this once. Assign it on begin play, and then we've got our reference to that. In fact, let's do that up here. Generally, I would do it on levels loaded. I think we're doing or checking the levels loaded on here. No, okay, so we'll just do it on on ship ready then. So this happens just the once on begin play. So we will get all access to class, and in fact we only want to do this if we are not. Yeah, so we'll do this on the server. I suppose it doesn't matter really, because no, it does matter. We shall do this if we have authority, because it's only the server that needs to care about this anyway. The client shouldn't ever be having to access our orders manager. So we know at this point all the levels are already loaded, so we don't need to check validity on this, because we know it will definitely be there. Right, so then we want to get our orders manager. And I think what we'll do, right now we're setting our shipwide order based on this enum, which I suppose we can still do, to be honest, because we can just do our switch based on our action ID. So if we do a select on that, no, we can't, can we? No, it's going to have to be a switch. We can't do a select on string, which is a real shame. So that one was, if we go back into our shipwide orders, so cancel orders, that needs to be our first one. And we need to make sure that we add that to here. So I guess we'll just set that to none. So that's that one. This does require some data, so we might need to maybe add some handling to this. I don't really want to add much more to this payload that's already there if it's something that's only going to be used once, because what we can do, if we get game state, then we cast to our StarSim game state, then we can get our command target. So we do actually have access to this replicated value for our command target, which will have either like the entire star system location or a specific object and a boolean to tell us which. So we can potentially like give it that data, but also give it the system object data as well based on that boolean. We'll see. We'll see how that goes as we go through it. Where are we? So, cancel orders, explore current system. Yeah. So for our current system, we of course need to know what system we are currently in. Now, when the Galaxy Gen generates the local system, it does broadcast that data out, so we can capture that data and keep a reference to that, so that when we send our shipwide orders through, we know what system we're currently in. In fact, we can probably do that from the orders manager itself rather than holding that on the player controller. Then we got exploring our command target. And there's our shipwide orders, and then we can tidy that up a bit. Deal with that one afterwards. Okay. So that should at least get the shipwide orders raised on the orders manager, or the task manager. So explore. Yeah, so these need to be renamed. So explore system would be our command target. And then this one would be explore the current system. So we need to rename those. And then for this one, we need to give it that. Although again, I will I'll make this more in-depth so we can be more specific with our orders. The first thing we want to see is we want to see those orders appearing on the board. So again, if we do this without actually touching anything ourselves, so we want to go to the long-range sensors. We want to pick a system, say Ava Centauri. So we now have our command target. Oops, no, I just walked through a portal to a planet. That's no good. I need to move that. I keep backing into it. Yeah, so there's our command target. Right now there's nothing on the board. So what we want to be able to do is go to shipwide orders and explore our command target.
Perform a short-range scan of all targets in this system.
And then they should...
Sir, navigating the ship to the target system.
Okay, they tried. So obviously nothing's coming up on these boards, and that's what we need to fix. So you can see that the helm tried to go to that system. It's targeted it. It's used our command target, but it didn't engage anything. So if we do that, it should actually send us there, which it is. But we have nothing coming up on the boards. So the way it's working right now is we've got just a very simple scripted event, which is passing commands between these two consoles when certain events are true. So like if we're within a certain distance of the planet, then this guy will start doing his short range scan. But that's all kind of running on our orders manager as opposed to actually being a proper task that we're tracking. So we're doing it, but we're not tracking it properly, which means it doesn't exist as an actual task in the system. So what we need to make sure we do is for every action that's being performed, like with these guys here, there is a corresponding task in the system that is trackable, traceable, and completable, so that if this NPC gets waylaid or blocked or in otherwise disrupted from what he's doing, the task is still assigned to them, and they will keep trying to complete that task, even if you're like surrounding them with boxes or otherwise just bullying them on the ship. Once they break out of the box fort that you build around them, they should then go and try and complete this task. So they should never give up whilst the task is assigned to them. And what happens with the bridge crew right now is because each task is fire and forget. If you break the chain of events, then they're not continuously checking to see what they should be doing because it's fire and forget. So we need to remove that methodology and make it so that we actually have trackable tasks for them to
Performing initial
complete.
system survey.
Yeah, so if we were to do that, see, we've now broken their logic because we've come along and touched one of the buttons on their console, and they now don't know what they're doing because we've obviously stepped in and messed it all up. So they now don't know that one, the full system of the medium range scan didn't complete. So if you abort the scan, they should wait a minute and go, hang on a minute, that didn't complete. Let's try again. Do some system checking to make sure that they're not currently scanning, so they can see that there's no active scan. The system hasn't been scanned to the point it needs to be. Right, I now need to do a scan. And then you can abort it again, and then you should be able to keep aborting the scan, and they should sit there and go, huh, and try again, which they won't do because there's nothing here telling them to. So that's what we need to get to. That's kind of the state that we need to be at. So I suppose the first question is, when we raise that action, hang on, let's get rid of that a minute, because I just remembered I made that needlessly earlier. Don't want any unnecessary files lingering around. Yeah, we need to trace the sequence of events from the point where we're passing things to this device. And I suppose let's open that up and just see what we're doing with it. So we are firing a blueprint interface to this. Which is none of these. Yeah, so we need to be creating these tasks specifically, but we're not. So what are we doing? So ship orders manager. Ah, right, okay. Right, so I can see what we're doing. So we're actually getting the wrong blueprint, because we also have a bunch of things here. So this shipwide orders manager was the old way that we were doing it, and on this one we've got those order setting breakouts, and we've got various step checking that we perform along the way. So we need to take the logic that we've got here and basically redo it better on the global task manager that we built a while back. Yeah, I'm sure we can, yeah. Yes, Danger Mouse. So each department is going to have a department head, and that department head will be responsible for assigning those tasks and making sure that those tasks are being completed. So if the task is assigned to someone who cannot complete that task, then the department head should come in and reassign it. Generally speaking, that's going to be an NPC, unless a player takes over that role, in which case the onus is then on the player to look at the task board, see who is assigned what, and if a particular crew member is incapacitated in any way or dead, then they need to actually reassign that task. These are things we don't want to automate, because the more we automate, there is less gameplay for the player to do. And obviously there's going to be some balancing there, because we want to balance having enough to do without it becoming like too much to do. We don't want too much busy work. We want it to just be busy but not too busy, so that it's still enjoyable. And obviously the opposite of that is we don't want to automate absolutely everything, because then you just sat there twiddling your thumbs with the game playing itself. So there's definitely a sweet spot we need to find in all of that. But yeah, being responsible for assigning tasks is basically the job profile of a department head. I guess that's the player choice thing. So if you just want to be someone who is assigned a task and you go and do the task, then you can just be someone within the department. If that's not enough work for you and you want to be doing more, then you can take on the role of the department head. So in addition to doing the tasks, you're also assigning tasks and managing tasks. So you're giving yourself more work to do within that role within the ship. So I guess, from that regard, you do have some limited choice as to how much work you do on the ship. Right, so this needs changing now. So we don't want that. We want our task manager. Oh, I've run out of tea. I hate running out of tea. No, thank you. I had a bottle of water here somewhere. Did you steal it? No. Yeah, I think that's it.
This one.
Yeah. Thank you. You might be interested to know that Claire is currently playing with metahumans. She's learning how to do the animations and things. So, never know, we might have an entire new character system built entirely by Claire within the next week. Is that right?
Crossed.
Yeah, about a week.
Yeah, that would be nice. Might have one within a week. I wonder if we should get them to send pictures of themselves, and I can see if I can make them best I can. Have
Not a
them
bad shout.
around the ship.
So I don't know whether you heard Claire say that, but yeah, she said if you send her a picture of yourself, then she'll try and make you as a metahuman, and then yeah, we can add you as an NPC.
$1 million.
Yeah, for $1 million. Million. Okay, so now we're referencing our correct task manager, and we need to make, first of all, ship-wide tasks. Do we have ship-wide catered for here? Sure, I made a ship-wide one. Yeah, I did. One of the problems with building some of this stuff on random Fridays is I can never remember how far I got with it and how much it was actually working. So so we're setting that as our active order. Okay. Right, so we want to create a ship-wide order with our task data. give it a random number. So that's how we know which order we're dealing with, so that we can, when we're checking it and closing it, we know the ID that we're referring to. So the order in this instance is explore system, and yeah, so it's going to start off at pending, and then we need to actually set it to active when it's being actively managed. Can't remember what the order code was for. I'm sure we created it for a reason. I remember. So yeah, so each order was going to have an actual code associated with it. So there was a specific type of order that you give. So each specific order has an order code associated with it, which uniquely identifies the type of order that is. So like refuel the ship would have like an engineering order code. So fully exploring a star system will have a science code. Yeah, and we were using that to make sure that that we don't issue the same order twice. So every type of order code can only exist in the system once, because explore this system, making that order twice, it becomes meaningless, because you're already that order is already queued up in the system. So on that note, let's give it the order code of explore system. We'll have to generate a meaningful list of order codes. Yeah, split by department, so that we actually know what we're doing with that. And we can probably also make these slash commands as well. So with the new chat system we built, one of the things I want to add to it is the ability to use slash commands to do shortcuts for certain behaviors. So rather than having to navigate your way through the radial menu, you could just do / and type in the command code, and then if you're of a sufficient rank, it'll do the same thing as using the radial menu, so that you can actually just shortcut those actions. And because those things are just slash codes, it means you can then use them for things like game glass and voice attack and software of that ilk, where you're just firing keyboard shortcuts at the game. So you can fire a string at the client into the chat box from an external device, which would make things nice and simple. It depends on the type, I believe, illusion. So I think if it's a string, like equals is matching string, whereas 3 equals is like case sensitive string matching, something like that. But depending on the data type, it means something different. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. Okay. Well, that should drop it into the queue at least. It's not going to do anything, I wouldn't have thought. again, I can't remember how far I got with it. So first of all, we'll go to our long range sensors. We will pick Alpha Centauri. We will give our command order for explore our command target. So that should create our shipwide order there, which it has. So we need to obviously do the UI work to actually make that proper. Give it more of a descriptive text, make it bigger, and actually have some meaningful data behind that. We also want to make sure we have a priority number on there as well, along with maybe like an up and down arrow so you can shift things around in priority. And then I suppose this screen is the kind of thing that we need access to on here. So we'll expand this slightly to make it more square. And we'll put a tabbed interface on here so that you can look at the task, to be honest, probably ship-wide task boards, like for all the different departments. So all of these, we'll add them as tabs on here, so that as captain, if we sit down a minute, you should be able to use the tabbed interface to see at a moment's notice who's doing what and where. And if you want a particular task to take precedence, then you can move that task on here to make sure that that task has the higher priority. And then as soon as the NPCs have finished their current action, they should start actioning whatever the highest priority task is. That's probably the easiest way of managing that. And of course, we also want all of these to be available in the conference room as a much bigger version as well. So this is actually the conference room screen here, funny enough. So on the conference room screen, in addition to this media library stuff for the YouTube player, we want a lot of ship data available on here as well. So we'll have things like the crew roster and the ability to manage the crew roster available on the big screen in the conference room, but also all of these as tabs. Need to make sure that commanding the ship is as fluid and as approachable as possible. We really want to avoid clunkiness wherever we can. There's a lot of data and a lot of actions and a lot of possibilities, and the opportunity for clunkiness is extreme. So we need to make sure that we make it as smooth as we can. Okay, so maybe we can have an Easter egg mode where we turn all the buttons on the ship into little boiled sweets. Could be quite funny. And the radio, yeah, we need that too. Okay, so right, we're creating our shipwide order. Now, here's where it gets complicated. We've got our pending order, so I guess we go through our shipwide orders. We check for this exact match. Yeah, so to answer the question on the equals. So case insensitive is that, whereas case sensitive. Yeah, so that's what it is. So equals equals is case insensitive, whereas the 3 equals is case sensitive. So they have to be an exact match. It is what I thought it was. Yeah, so we make sure that order does not already exist in the system. Yeah, then we're setting our shipwide order as that pending one. I guess we need to see whether it's pending or not. Can't remember whether we put that on the UI. Will do. Okay, so we need to do a little bit of UI work there just to make sure that we're reporting whether or not it's pending or active or what other state it's on. Thank you. Well, the new demo update is imminent as soon as all this is working and polished. And the $1 million question is always when? When's it coming out? And the answer is always as soon as it's finished. It's very difficult to be able to predict how long these things take. We just plug away at it day by day until it's done. Right, so here's our ship-wide ones, and we want that task list item. So I've copy pasted all of these from UI to UI, so they're all very, very generic right now. As we go through each department doing this properly, all of these UIs need obviously making unique to those departments. So just need to see where we're adding the data. So we're going to be calling that from here. Clean up the junk. Okay, there's the button presses. That's the electrical and optimization stuff. Right, where are you being used? Right, okay, so each screen then is ticking away, and it's looking for the list of tasks, and then when it sets its replicated variable, we update our shipwide UI, which is here. So that's what we're firing. We're giving it a list of tasks. Then we're clearing our UI. We're going through each of those tasks, and then we are populating this with that data. So guess we need more stuff there basically. So if we take our order and just pop that in there as a string for now. We'll set that as our order state. So again, make that a string. Didn't think that looked right then. Right, so that should give us like whether or not it's pending. What other fields do we have? So that one, again, I've used the same widget elements that we've got for the sensors, so they're all named the wrong thing right now. So if we call that task name, just so we know what we're doing, and we'll call that task state. And that's irrelevant for the moment. Actually, let's call that task code. Make sure these are all variables. Right, so we've got our task name. Yeah, that's irrelevant. So target object needs to be task state. In all honesty, I do need to do away with separate variables here and just give it this. Which I might do that now actually. So tasks shipwide structure. So if we just add that as a variable. So struct shipwide tasks, and then we shall expose that on spawn. And if we get rid of these ones, in fact, we may as well just delete them entirely. And then what we can do instead, just compile that a minute. So if we get our task struct, and rather than dealing with all of those variables individually, we can just break the struct and grab what we need from there. Which means from here, rather than doing all that nonsense, we can just pop that in there instead, and it's a lot cleaner. And then from a UI perspective, we don't need to know what the UI is doing. We just give it the raw data and be done with it. We let the UI deal with what it's doing with the data. So we've got our task name, our task state. So that was that one, wasn't it? So that was our name. Then our state was that one. And then we also had our order code. We call that task code. So we got state, name, code. What's all this other stuff? And we can just pop our order code in there, so. Right, so when we generate that now, we should see like whether it's active or pending or what other state the task might be in. Again, just to save a bit of time, click that, do our shipwide order. Wait, stop that. And then we get explore system pending. And there's our order code there. Obviously, again, this needs a proper UI. We're just using the sensor as one for now, just to test it. But we will make it, or we'll make each department will have its own sort of department-specific look and feel. So we need to go from pending to active. So on our task manager then. So we're running this. We're checking to see whether any of our existing shipwide orders match the order code that we're giving it. And if they do, we set matching orders to true. So we're setting our active order to pending. Oh, okay, so that's just right. Let's just make a note on here so I know for future me, I'll know why I did this. Set active order pending. Actually, reset active order state. So basically, we just need to make sure we because we're changing our active orders, we'll set the current active order pending, and then we'll manage what we're doing. So if there's already that order in the system, so we're checking our order code. So if that order code exists in the system already as a pending order, and we try and give that order, then all we do is then set that order to active. So we grab our matching order index from our array of orders and say for that one specifically, make that the active order right now, because we can only have one active shipwide order at a time. What we're not doing is if we're raising an order and is not already in the system, by virtue of the fact that that's the last thing the captain said, that should be the active order. But what we're not doing here is making it active. So we need to take this and set it active. Although that said, I do wonder why we're even tracking that separately. Because if we are have that as part of our struct data anyway, we don't necessarily need that. So yeah, so for this one, we we need to set members there to active. And then add that to our active orders instead. So we don't need that. Which means that should not be needed. I'm going to keep it for a minute just in case I suddenly remember why I put it there. But off the top of my head, I can't think why I'd need to. Because yeah, so what we should be doing is, rather than doing that, we should be looping our shipwide orders, setting all of them to pending, because we're processing a new shipwide order. So yeah, let's do that first. Obviously we don't want to do it here because or do we actually? No, we don't. So it sounds like I'm going mad, but what we want to do is, before we choose our active order, we obviously need to make sure that nothing else is active. So we need to loop through all of these. We need to set each one to pending. And then once we've done that, then we want to go through and do the loop where we are then working out whether any of those match one of our existing orders, in which case that can then be set to pending. So right, let's get rid of that. So if any of these match our new one that's just coming in, then we need to set that to active. If there are no matches, as in it's a brand new order, then that becomes the active one instead. But because we've gone through and set all the orders to pending, it means that we won't end up with a situation where there's two of them active at once, which will confuse the system. Yeah, and then setting our active order, we won't need, I expect, because although yeah, we can probably piggyback off of that each time, because even if we're setting our new active orders, we still need to check to see whether it exists in the system already. So that is kind of redundant because we're doing it here. So what should happen now is we should have, rather than pending, it should say active. And then what we'll do then is, for our active orders, we'll then start working on what are the sub-steps per station on the bridge. So again, we just target Alpha Centauri, make our shipwide order. Task comes up as active now. So we've been through the loop, we've cleared off all the pending ones, we've made this one active. That is now our active order. If we try and raise that again, then that shouldn't change, because it will only allow one order in the system which is matching that particular order code. So it doesn't matter how many times you try and raise the same order, it won't allow multiple orders of the same type. Now what should happen next is this explore system shipwide task should remain there active whilst multiple tasks appear and disappear on the bridge tasks, whilst these two NPCs busily go about their job, trying to satisfy the criteria of the shipwide task. So what we need to build is we need to build the system for checking the actual criteria. So we need the exploration data for the given system. We need to keep polling that data to see whether or not that system has been fully explored. And when we're generating our tasks here, we need to be flipping between what is the closest planet to us, has that planet been explored yet, if the one that's closest to us has already been explored, then pick the next closest target to us, and then repeat until finished, basically. So the bridge stations will continually get these tasks to complete, and then once this decides that every single planet in the system has been fully explored, it will then stop generating tasks for the individual bridge stations. And the reason we want to do it that way is, again, so that if we mess it up, if we manually press buttons and send the ship somewhere else and turn off the FTL drive and generally screw with the NPCs, because we're continually generating tasks here, they should be able to get back on track and kind of self-rectify the situation. Curse you as the player for pressing their buttons for them, and get back to their job. Hopefully, anyway. That's how robust it needs to be. So we'll see whether we can make it that robust. Right then, so we're going to need a tick running on here, so that's that one basically, which we've already got. So manage shipwide orders. Okay. So what are we doing here? Oh yeah, so on our 1 hertz tick that we've got, we are splitting our shipwide orders array into separate arrays, so that we know which orders are in which state. So if we want to have a history of orders that have been completed, then we've got that history available to us. So this will grow over time in that regard, and we can have some cutoff for total number of orders tracked, but we want at least some kind of backwards visibility to see whether something has failed or it's been completed to some extent. You might limit it to 100 or something, just so that we've got that data available. And then once we've identified which one is the active order, that's where we go ahead and start managing managing the individual tasks that need to get raised. So in this instance, it's explore system. And on a previous stream, we were looking at having them seek out specific things. And we'll collapse these graphs and tidy this up as we go. Yeah, so if we cancel our active orders, then we basically need a no orders order, if that makes sense, that we process through the system to make sure that if the current order is none, then we're not generating any subtasks. They just stop being generated. So the NPCs basically stop doing things on the bridge. So really, we need to be handling this down here. Where is it? Here. So we need to be checking our order code. Yeah. So we don't want to do anything here. Obviously we're yeah, so we can ignore all of that if we break this, if our order code is cancel, hang on, let's work out what we were actually sending. So cancel orders, which means we need to actually, I might rather than sending this through as a task, let's send it through instead as a separate thing on here. So shipwide orders, got set, update, create, set active, get active. Yeah, so let's add cancel on here. Cancel shipwide order. Right, and we shouldn't need a payload for that because we're just sending that through as a message. So we'll get our orders manager, and then we'll just do cancel shipwide order. And all we need to do with that, and because we're going to do this separately to that, so we'll get rid of that and pop that back in there, and that can go back over there. And in our event graph, we just need to grab that interface function we just made. That one, cancel shipwide order. So all we're going to do is basically that. So we're just going to set all of our shipwide orders to pending. Yeah, so they should just sit in the queue. So we'll have, I suppose, yeah. So for individual orders that are in the queue, we'll have the ability to delete them from the queue. So from that regard, we'll send this through with an order ID. Obviously, we're creating those order IDs when we generate the order. So when we do this, we have our order instance. So we can get rid of the order from that as a unique ID. So I think what we'll do, if we rename that to orders, and we maybe call it. Someone said earlier in Discord that it was belay. I always thought it was delay. Is it? Oh, it is belay. Like, I've gone through my whole life thinking it was delay that order. So you can tell I've never served in the military, can't you? Yeah. So if we use that instead, then it will set them all to pending without actually deleting them. So it means that we can pause the current orders. I'm sure it means something. It says, originating from 16th century nautical terminology, it specifically referred to securing a rope to a belaying pin on a ship, evolving to mean halting or revoking a directive. There we go, that's the history behind it. And what we'll do on the menu is we'll just rename that. I suppose we'll also rename that and then make sure that we're also updating that down the line. So that one needs to be renamed to that one. Yeah, it makes sense. Is your fridge battery powered? Never heard of a battery powered fridge. That should actually be it. So yeah, so when we're doing the tick, then our active shipwide order, I mean, there shouldn't be any. So we need to make sure that we set that to nothing. Yeah, that should default to none. Which means we want it to do nothing. So as we go through them all, they should all be pending. So I suppose, yeah, so as we go, I think we might need to add rather than keeping these as local structs, which are going to be reset every time the function fires. Because we're going through and literally setting all of them to pending, it means any that were set to, say, complete suddenly go to pending. So we'll have to go through and only set them to pending if they're active, just to make sure that that doesn't cause us future problems. So if that equals pending, then we set it, sorry, if it equals active, then set it to pending. And then we'll need to do the same thing here as well. And of course I have to tidy it up. Yeah, so we'll go through them and only set them to pending if they're active. Just solves that for the future. Right, so let's just test that out then. So we should be able to set the current order back to pending. So grab our long range, grab a planet. So we will create our order to explore, which is active. So if we now go to belay current orders, it should go to pending unless it's not updating the struct. And I always have issues with this. I can never remember whether or not that is actually updating the struct, because I think the way you have to do it is you get a hard reference using the index and do it that way. That should set them to pending, because we're now dealing with a reference rather than a copy, and I think that comes out as a copy, which means when you set members, it's not actually setting it in the original struct. So we need to do that again on this one. So to get reference, that index, right, let's try that. That always catches me out, that one. Ah, that sucks, Vestus. Well, I wish you good luck. So explore the system. It's active. Delay current orders. Pending. There we go. Okay, so from a stopping the NPCs doing stuff perspective, that should be enough to do that. So if we now go back to shipwide orders, because we still have our command targets set. So shipwide orders, explore target, and you see it's now gone back to active, which is good. And orders, shipwide orders, belay current orders, and it goes back to pending. Great, so that's working. We're getting there step by step. Right, so we've got the ability to raise a new shipwide order. We've got the ability to pause processing on those orders. I guess the next thing we need is going through and actually generating individual tasks for the NPC crew members to actually do something. Now, from an NPC perspective, it's easy because we are simply assigning that task to whichever NPC is active within the given bridge station's chair. We can check the chairs, we know if anyone's sat in them or not, we know if an NPC is active. If you're a player, you might not be sat in the chair at the time. So we need some kind of HUD display to ping up a message, some kind of an order, telling you that something's required of you. You need to go sit in the chair and do something. Similarly, if you're in the chair, the same applies. So you need to get something on your HUD that says something along the lines of perform a medium range scan, or target the next unscanned planet in this system. And then as the player, obviously you then need to do that, and as soon as you have targeted something, the system then needs to be aware that you've done that, so that it can flag that as complete, so that the next step in the chain can be generated, which is for the helm to then fly to that. So it would probably be target the next unscanned planet and send to helm, and as soon as you press send to helm, then it's considered that your job is now complete, and then the helm gets its task, right, fly to the current sensor target, and off you pop. Where there's room for failure in that is that if you get cocky and target a planet outside of the current system that you're supposed to be in, then if the system is triggered off of sending it to the helm, then as far as the system's concerned, you've done your job without realizing that you actually haven't done your job. You've been sneaky and you've targeted a planet somewhere else completely. So we're also going to have to delve deeper and make sure that the target you have set is both within the system that you're supposed to be scanning and isn't already explored. So it's not something that's already been fully scanned. So we're going to have to put in those logic checks on top of that, so that task is not cleared off until you've sent the helm a valid target to go to next. And then from the helm's perspective, it's actually a lot easier because we're just checking against the ship's coordinates. So if the ship is not within the correct distance of the target, then that task will never set as complete. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of complexity to that, kind of to that depth of complexity when we're checking objective completion. Hey, Binary. All good, thank you. We are currently sorting out the shipwide orders task system, so that we're generating proper tasks that are properly being executed, as opposed to magically happening in the background. Almost like smart objectives. Measurable and trackable and all that stuff. Okay, so this is the logic. This is where all the magic needs to take place now. So there's a few. See, it's tempting immediately to throw a state machine at this, because this is basically what we're building. But I think we'll just make a blueprinty state machine instead that's a little bit simpler. So the first thing that we need to check is, are we inside of the system that needs to be explored? And if we're not, then a task needs to be raised for the helm to take us to that system, basically to the outskirts of that system. And we need to start doing that by default. So if you target a star, just generally on the long range sensors, and you fly to that star system without having targeted anything within that system specifically, then the arrival point needs to be set basically on the outskirts of where the planets are formed. So basically like Kuiper Belt kind of distance. And that's your arrival point within that system. Because if that's an inhabited system, and they may not be friendly, then you don't want to be warping right into the center of the system in the middle of their fleet of big scary warships. So you want to be able to arrive at the outskirts of the system and then maybe hail them and check that it's safe to proceed. So we need to put that into this as well, to make sure that the ship doesn't just blunder into the system as a whole. Make sure that it stops on the outskirts, performs a medium range scan, and then if anything pertinent crops up on that medium range scan, then there needs to be some kind of hold state on the orders, because you need input from the captain. So if you've discovered a giant armada around one of the planets, you don't want to rock up to it and start scanning it. So you need to be able to say to the captain, "We've found this, what do we do?" And then the captain needs the option to say, just continue with your job and ignore them, or right, obviously the situation has changed, cancel these orders, here's your new orders. So that needs to be folded into it as well. As I've said on previous streams, this is probably the biggest system in the whole game, because there's going to be a lot of options and a lot of complexity and a lot of what ifs. So let's start by getting our ship state. Do I have that set up as... No, I thought I had that set up as an interface, but I don't, so we'll just cast to it for now. Get ship state. Right, so this is our replicated ship state for the ship that we're currently on. Sorry, not the ship we're currently on. This is all the ships in the game. So any ship that is flyable in your nearby vicinity is going to be registered as one of these ship states. And for each of those, we will have this sort of data. So so where it is, what its nav target is, what its current state is, and various other bits and pieces. And this list will grow a fair bit, I would have thought, as we flesh things out. But this is how we know if we're in the right system, because we've got our galactic coordinates that we can compare against. So what we want to know is, are our current galactic coordinates matching the system that we are exploring? Now, fortunately, we have that. Or we did have that as part of our payload, so I think that was maybe on the old one. So this is why each type of order comes with its own struct, because the payloads that we're going to need are going to differ depending on the type of department order that it is. So for example, the medical orders aren't going to care about our science targets, whereas the shipwide one will, because obviously we need to know, is the ship currently in the right system, but we don't know that because we haven't yet added that to our struct. So we need to go to our shipwide tasks, and we need to add things like exploration target, sector location, and that is struct sector location. And then same thing, which is going to be a system object. So that's like a planet or a moon or a space station, something within a star system. So sector location is star system or anything else which takes up 1 light year's worth of space, and that's the stuff within the sector location. So that should be struct large system object. Now for each of these ship departments, we need to start adding department specific payload data in order to manage the kind of tasks that get raised within that department. We do run the risk of bloating this if we're not careful, so we just need to make sure that we only store the bare minimum of stuff that we need in order to complete the task. So having done that, every single blueprint that references it obviously now needs recompiling, otherwise it will get a null reference for the struct and will not compile. So just need to sort that out. Hopefully it wasn't too many of them. You'll find out when I package it. Okay, so creating our shipwide order, we now have access to obviously this additional stuff. Yeah, I may as well just leave all this exposed. So there's our sector location data that we're giving it. And again, if we were, if our target is the current system, then this struct is slightly different because it has more information on it. Or if we're sending the ship to explore a specific planet, then we'll use this boolean to use this instead, basically. So that's our switch as to whether we're using which one of these we're using. But for now, we know that it's only going to be the star system, so we can use that one. Right, so armed as we are with this information, we don't need that one. We can grab this, and break that. So we know our galactic coordinates. So basically, do those match? And I think I will, for the sake of not creating spaghetti everywhere, I'll do that. So that's our first logic check, basically. Is the ship in the right star system? And we'll branch that. So we'll run through these checks, basically a branch at a time, to work out which task needs to be raised next. So let's just collapse these to explore star system. Fully explore star system. Yes, Danger Mouse, the orders menu will work everywhere and will be context sensitive. So the whole point with the radial menu is it's continuously updating its context depending on where you are or what you're looking at. So if you're not on the bridge, then you won't get the usual orders to like explore this star system, because that's only relevant if you're on the bridge and you have a command target. So if you don't have a command target or you're not on the bridge, then the options it gives you will be different. So it will always be updating its context. Again, with the type of game it is, with the sheer depth of things you can do, we need the interface between you and the game to be as simple but as intelligent as possible. Because especially if you're using a game controller, like, we need everything on one button. So that one action button needs to cover everything, which is why the radial menu is the way to go with it. Okay. So we now know where we are. So if we're not in the right coordinates, then the next thing to do is we need to raise a task for the helm. Now we've got already all of these task structs already, so which is good. So we need to add a new deck task on here. Oh, actually, no, we're not doing it to deck, are we? We're doing it as a bridge task, because the bridge is its own department. And of course we haven't set this array up yet, this struct up. So for this one, we are going to need an enum for each bridge station, and that's how each bridge station is going to check this. So, so all the different bridge stations, or NPCs, are going to check once per second to see whether or not there are any tasks pending for them, essentially. And all of these will show up on the bridge tasks board. And they will then action those tasks depending on the relevancy at the time. And I'm just thinking while I'm saying that obviously this is running once per second, so it's going to create a bridge task once per second. Let's just see whether it is creating the task first. So the UI, all these UIs, are also checking once per second from the task manager to see whether any tasks are there matching their department. So if we target something where we are not, i.e. Alpha Centauri, so right now we've got nothing on there. So if we explore this, now what should happen is, because we've got an active task there, we should start seeing those bridge tasks appearing here. I don't know whether or not I set any of those up. No, that's that shipwide one again. So again, this one is checking the same data as this one, which is why they've got the same thing on them. So either it's checking the wrong place, or it's not fully set up. Oh, okay, yeah, so it's just a generic thing, and task department is bridge. So we just need to make sure that on our tick event, that one, for shipwide orders, yeah, that one. Ah, there we go. So yeah, so let's not do any of that. So the bridge tasks should just update. Yeah, that's fine. Why was I doing this? So that's getting specifically the sensors ones. Don't know why I was doing that. I'll delete it and pretend it was never there. Right, let's just try that again a minute. I just thought of one thing I want to check. So we're checking obviously which. Oh, it's okay because we're only checking the active ones anyway. So the reason I wanted to double check that is because we don't want to be doing anything if it's not an active order at the time, but we're already dealing with that, so that's fine. We won't have any unnecessary things being created. So we should have a duplicate task being created once per second, which is normal for now, and then when we choose to belay that order, then it should stop raising tasks. So let's just make sure that that is in fact the case. Yeah, I'm already confused. So select a star, that one will do. So as soon as we set this, it should start creating those. Yeah, so once per second, like that, which is normal. We want that, that's fine. But now, if we hit that, it should no longer be creating them because we're now set to pending. So that's good. Doing what it's supposed to. If we now give this order, it should start generating tasks again. which it does. Great, so all that is working. We're halfway there. Were you just humming Bon Jovi? We are also living on a prayer. Right, so we need to make sure that only one is being raised. Technically, but we don't want to knock off all of them, because we'll have the ability to cancel the orders from the UI. So on the UI itself, there will be a cancel button where you can just cancel off the orders individually. This is more of a stop doing what you're doing kind of command. Is there a better word we could use, maybe? I suppose what we don't want to do is knock off all the orders, because if you've got, say, 5 or 6 orders pending, and you're just waiting to go through them all, what you don't want to do is hit belay current orders, have all of them disappear off the list. We need a way of just pausing so we can take stock of a situation and then decide whether or not to continue. Because we could also set them active or inactive on the UI rather than using the radial menu. So I guess the radial menu is just, yeah, hold. That might work as well. Yeah, the radial menu is for creating the order, and then you can use the UI for managing the order. So you can hold and cancel and everything from the UI itself and assign in other departments. But yeah, hold, I think that works well. Let's see what fits on the UI, because ultimately that's the that's the defining thing. All right. What term is like belay for an order, but to hold rather than cancel? Yeah, hold is what Google reckons. Or avast. I like avast, it's very piratey. I didn't know that. Avast actually means hold fast, and it's just been shortened to avast. Learning new stuff. I like hold then. Yeah, see what it thinks. Don't know. It came from Deep Blue Sea Training, wherever that is. Alright, we'll go with stay. I won't bother changing the code in the background yet until we settle on that permanently. Right, Okay, so we need to set some data for there. We need to make sure this is only doing it once. So I suppose rather than just adding the task directly, we need to be using like that. So we need a check and set new orders for, or basically each of these, to be honest. Well, saying that. So I'm just trying to think ahead. If we're making it so that you can only have one instance of a helm order to fly to a specific location, then that means you remove the ability to chain orders to fly to different locations. But I'm thinking that might actually be better suited as maybe a separate, like a patrol path kind of thing. Yeah, I think for now we will we'll do our check and set the same as we did for the shipwide. So we're just making sure there are no duplicate orders. And if we want to queue up a bunch of locations, then we'll handle that by something specific, and we can maybe then give it an array of vectors, so the ship can go from vector to vector, one after the other. And if we're giving it an array of vectors, then technically that's an infinite length path that we can give it. Yeah, we'll do it that way. So if we duplicate that, so check and set new bridge tasks, and then we need to break all this basically. So that is struct button tasks bridge, and that's going to break all of this. So bridge tasks, replace that, which means we need to do that instead. Same there, bridge tasks. Yeah, I'm going to set our order state and everything as well. Although, to be honest, for the bridge stations, we don't necessarily need like pending and such, because these are more immediate actions as opposed to like an overall order which takes a while to complete. These are instant actions. Yeah, I think we'll still track that to a point. I think I'll put the order state on there, just so we've got it, and then we'll see. Right, so for that we're going to need our bridge tasks struct, which is unhelpfully empty. Right, so we want oh, YouTube just crashed. Hasn't done that in a long time. Am I still alive? Yeah, okay, I think we're still here. So bridge order states. Right, what do I actually have there? Oh yeah, so where are they? Okay, so yeah, we did start creating those. Okay, yeah, so these are slightly different in that we're assigning them. Yeah, so we're missing a pending on there. I think just thinking how we're doing the other tasks that we're raising. I think until a task has been assigned to a crew member, it should definitely show up as pending rather than acknowledged. Yeah, so assigned is assigned to someone. Pending is waiting to be assigned. Rejected, I guess someone's rejected it and it's gone back in the queue. Failed means a failure state. Cancelled means it's been withdrawn, and complete would be successful completion. So let's rename acknowledged to pending. To be honest, from our ordering, it needs to go pending, assigned. Yeah, they're rejected, failed, cancelled, complete. I guess that can go there. So it goes from pending through to completion. Okay, so we're going through all of our tasks, and if any of them are assigned, we're setting them to pending, and then we'll do the same as we did before. So we want to break that, and we want to break that. And then we need our task ID, task code, I suppose. Also, we need our task station, I suppose, as well, because we need to know which bridge station we're talking about. And then our task code, which is our string. See, it's tempting rather than creating long and complicated enums for all the possible tasks that there could be. It's probably simpler on the whole if we just go off of our task code, because we can switch on that in the future. But I guess we can't select on it. I tend to use select nodes quite often, and you can't select on a string. I might have to see if I can cobble together some kind of C++ function that allows selecting on strings, because if I can do that, that would make my life easier. Oh wow. Well, at least they'll be new and shiny. Yeah, I was thinking more for the task themselves, like where are we? Is it this one? Hang on. Let's close off some of these tabs because, as always, I'm confused. What I was looking for. Right, so when it comes to working out which shipwide order we're currently dealing with, obviously we're making this an enum, which we have to pre-populate with all the different orders that could be received. So in order to work out the state machine for each one when we're tracking progress, obviously we're switching on an enum to work that out. And I'm just wondering whether or not it would be more versatile to make this a string rather than an enum. Obviously enums are neater and lovelier and look better than a string. And you don't have to type them in every time you do a switch. So I suppose actually from a management perspective, when you update the enum, it automatically expands all the switches you might be using from it. So there's an argument to be made for that. Plus you can select on an enum that you can't do on a string. So I think I'm answering my own question, aren't I? Enums are better. I was just wondering whether or not we could avoid this entirely if we were using the order code. But then, do we even need an order code if we have an order enum? Because I guess the code becomes redundant at that point, doesn't it? Because if the reason we need it is for seeing whether or not that particular order has already been raised, then we can compare two enums together just as easily as we can two strings. So that really then begs the question, do we even need a string in the first place? Let's try it without a minute. So it's the other thing. Where a string would be better is because we've got different bridge stations, we don't necessarily know which bridge station we're comparing to. So if we're comparing two strings, then we don't need to work out which enum we're going to pick from when we're comparing. because we'd have to store each list of orders separately for each bridge station. So within our struct, we'd need to have an enum entry for every single bridge station, of which there are 11. Yeah, you can compare a struct against a struct, but they have to be the same struct. Yeah, they have to be the same type. Yeah, because we've got those already. So we basically need something akin to this for every single bridge station. And then we need this for every single comparison we do. So yeah, so I think for comparison's sake, we'll use the task code, because we don't need to know in advance what it is. We just need to know whether it matches or not. Yeah. Or we could just we could perhaps just do this differently, and avoid this comparison. Yeah, exactly. Although I think I do it more by way of a command, like a command code. I like the idea of all the different orders that could possibly be given has a command code associated with it, which I'm sure we'll have a use for at some point. So we'd have to build up a big table of command codes that we reference. But I'm just thinking in terms of making sure that the same order isn't raised twice. First of all, we'd need to know which department we're dealing with, and then as we're going through and doing our comparisons, we'd first need to make sure that the department matched, and then the order itself matched for that department. Whereas if we're just comparing strings, we're just comparing strings. So yeah, I think that's basically the way to go. We have our task/command code just as a string that we compare, and then we keep the enums for actually working out what it is we're doing. Because we can use a select on the bridge station to pull out a specific enum. So for future reference, if we break that a sec, because what we can do is we can do a select on our bridge station. These aren't the bridge stations, but we can do a select on bridge station, and then for each of these we can then pull out a further enum of information. So on that note, we need a bridge station's enum. I guess we'll stick them on here actually. So we're going to need one of these for each vessel as well, just to make it even more complicated. So we might need some separate setup for different ships that have slightly different bridge layouts with different stations. Actually, no, what I'll do is I'll make a generic bridge station's enum, and we'll simply start off with the Magellan ones, and as we need more in the future, we can just add those to the list, because this isn't going to be picked from automatically. That'll be predefined. So if we do command generically, and then we've got helm, sensors, comms, tactical, defense, power, propulsion, security, and environmental. Right, so those are all our bridge stations. The command one's an awkward one because we've got the captain role, but we've also got the XO role, and technically the XO can do anything the captain can do. Obviously the captain has the final say, but if the captain walks off the bridge, then the XO should be able to do everything, including, pick up a call from an admiral if need be. So if we just group both of those in command, then we can have either of them able to action any of those command tasks that get raised. Yeah, I think we're going to make the chief engineer our second officer on the ship, at least on the Magellan. So then we're going to need, I'll set this as a Boolean for now so that I can see whether I've done it or not. Command tasks. So we're going to need an enum for each bridge station with those tasks on it. Now the alternative way of doing that is to have one giant monolithic enum with all the tasks that are relevant to the bridge. But I think I prefer keeping them separate. So command, helm, sensors, comms, tactical, defense, power, propulsion, security, environmental. Hey, Tannox, good to see you. Yes, the ability to hand over the con to a crew member definitely needs to be there, and I think what we'll do is we'll flag a command authority on a per character basis. So we can just have a boolean for that, where it basically is in command, true or false, and handle it from there. So by default for the captain and the XO, that's always true. But yeah, if you hand the con over to someone else, then temporarily they'll have that flag. So helm, oops, sensors, comms, tactical, defense, Caution. Oops. Task. Security. And environmental. Right, and each one of those needs an enum with its relevant tasks. I think I did the science one already. So enum, department roles, science. Let's just double check that a minute. Oh, no, that was bridge order sensors, wasn't it? No, that wasn't it. Oh, sensors orders. Yeah, there we go. So bridge sensors orders. Bridge orders. I'm going to rename that. Just so it keeps them alphabetically together. So bridge orders, sensors, and then we're going to have one of these for each department. So for now we only need 2 because we're only worrying about the helm and the sensors for the moment. Ah, that's really good to hear, Tanox. And ultimately, that's why we're making it. So, you know, we're the same. We grew up on Star Trek and Babylon 5 and all those really, really, really good classic sci-fi shows. And the way they depicted exploring the galaxy, meeting new cultures, and just having that joy of exploration and discovery, that's that feeling, that's that experience that we wanted, you know, living and working aboard a starship whilst exploring the galaxy and seeing what's out there. Yeah, that's what we wanted from a game, and no one else was making it, so we decided to. We're hoping for an early access release sometime around Christmas, although, as Claire is commonly telling me almost on a daily basis, there's no way you're going to have it done by then, but we'll see. What we're working on right now is probably one of the more complicated parts of the puzzle. So once this task system is done and polished, and we have the ability for any NPC in any department to carry out tasks and properly manage tasks via a task management system, then like the groundwork is then done for gameplay across the whole ship, and that's one of the big things we wanted to get done for early access. Obviously we've got things like planetary landings, exploring alien derelict stations and ships and things, and all of the like interacting with the galaxy outside of the ship stuff. You know, ultimately that's where the gameplay is coming from, is interacting with things outside of the ship. But you know, we're getting there. So you know, the planetary landing system is working, it just needs fleshing out. Like the ability to fly around in the shuttle is working, it just needs fleshing out. We haven't started with alien derelicts and things yet, but the base code is there for being able to exist on something that's not the ship. So obviously the perspective you see out the window, you know, the system that you're in, the sky that you're looking at, it's obviously unique depending on where you are in the galaxy, and that is now done for any location that you happen to be, and you can be somewhere else to another player. So all of that's done, and that's like the foundation code for being able to build up all those locations within the game. So what I want to get to this year is getting all that foundational code done and all of the background stuff done, in a really basic grey box kind of way, so that like for the latter half of the year, all we're doing is making it look pretty. So we've already done the hard work where we've done the code, we've bug fixed it, it's all running smooth, and then it's just a case of making it look good. So that's kind of like the plan of action moving forward. How long that's going to take, don't know. It's just a case of day by day, line by line, we're just going to keep plodding on. And you know, I stream 3 times a week, so we're certainly not hiding away in a dark room doing this. You can see the process, warts and all, 3 times a week. Yeah, I mean, I have a huge amount of respect for what Gene Roddenberry created back in the day. I think Star Trek has definitely gone wayward these days, and it's not the Star Trek I remember or the Star Trek I love. But I guess we're doing our own thing, and we're inspired by the likes of original Star Trek of old. I guess for me, Star Trek kind of ended around Enterprise era and Nemesis. I can't really call anything after that proper Star Trek, but that's kind of like, that's where my headspace is. So you know, the things I'm creating, that's where my inspiration is. It's from that era of sci-fi. And you know, I'm a huge Babylon 5 fan as well, so there's a lot of Babylon 5 influence that comes into what we're building. But yeah, so kind of 80s 90s sci-fi, that's what we're building here. Yeah, I guess you could say that. So navigate to sensor target, navigate to command target. There's a whole bunch of stuff here we don't need. Trying to think, what was the helm actually doing? I mean, generally speaking, either they're navigating to something the sensors have painted, or it's a target that the command have painted on the holo display. There really isn't much else going on other than those two things. I suppose we can simplify that even more. By just doing navigate to location, because the location that is being navigated to, it doesn't matter where that comes from. At the end of the day, you just got to get the ship there. I suppose the other two things we can put are use sensor target and use command target, just as just a couple of extra things that we can fire through. So engage autopilot and engage FTL. Yeah, so I think other than these specific things, I think most of the time, certainly in terms of giving orders to players and sending orders across to an NPC, we're just telling the helm, go here, get the ship from A to B. And that was bridge orders helm. So helm task, bridge orders helm. Yeah, I don't think we want to go quite that retro. Yeah, certainly not in terms of floppy disks. Yeah, I think for me, and of course I'm just talking personally here, for me, Star Trek was always about using science to solve problems and learning to be a better human being. It was about exploring the unknown and dealing with these unknown situations and meeting these new cultures. It was all about science and exploration and furthering ourselves as a species and bettering ourselves as a species. And I just feel that modern Trek doesn't have that. I think Strange New Worlds is probably the closest to that. Like there was one episode in Discovery, I think it's one of the first Pike episodes, where they're in like some church on a planet, and I remember thinking, wow, this is actually Star Trek. Like for the first time, this is actually Star Trek. But it was like one episode out of the entirety of Discovery. And all the rest of it is just, I don't even understand what Starfleet Academy even is. Can't get my head around that one at all. Like, what's it even trying to be? Okay. Right, so we got a bunch of stuff now, and we don't need all of that. So first, we want to make sure that any assigned... Actually, there is another complication here, in that we don't want to set a task to pending if it's for a different bridge station. So let's put a pin in all that in a minute. I guess the first thing we need to do is switch on our bridge station, because that is essentially going to determine like how we proceed with this. It does make it awkward having all the different bridge stations in the same task management system, but we can live with it. We can work our way around it. Let's just dump that for a minute. Right, so we're only caring about helm and sensors for now, so we don't need to worry about the rest of them. So I suppose... oh yeah, so just to make this even more complicated, that should be an array. So we can't do that either. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to separate these out. So I imagine the easiest way to manage this is going to be to create a separate array for each bridge station. Now again, we'll only do the 2 for now, for brevity's sake. So we'll have helm tasks and sensors tasks, and we want that as in struct bridge, and that one will be the same, struct bridge, and then both of these will be an array. Okay, so for each one of these, what we're going to do is we're going to oops, not going to set those. We're going to add these tasks to some subarrays that we can then deal with. So we're dealing with them in isolation to make life somewhat easier. So if we just switch on that. And then for each helm task, we will add to there. Let's just stick in a couple of reroutes on that to tidy it up. And then for the sensors, we will add to that. So for all of the different bridge stations, the first thing we'll do is we'll split these out into their own separate arrays in a local variable. Now, to the best of my knowledge, I'm pretty sure these reset every time the function is run. They're kind of like transient arrays, so we don't necessarily need to clear them. I'll see whether or not we suddenly get bloated with loads of tasks, but I don't think they need clearing each time. Yeah, so then having done that, we then need to, I guess we stick in a sequence node. Get rid of that again. Then we're going to have to for each on both of these. Wow, sacrilege. It's true. I mean,
Some terrible acting.
TOS is definitely very, very janky, and I guess you have to watch it with that in mind. Like, you have to just, yeah, in the back of your head, you know, this was made in the 60s.
Yeah.
It's full of jank, it's full of wobbly sets, and it's got some charm to it because of that. But there are still good stories being told. Like, if you see past the jank, like with Babylon 5. So I still haven't managed to get Claire to watch Babylon 5 all the way through, because it's old, it's dated, the sets are a little bit rough and ready, the CGI is awful by modern standards. I mean, they did the CGI on a bank of Amigas, I think it was, back in the day. So it's all like, it's dated, to be generous to it. But the storytelling is exceptional and the characters are exceptional. And if you can see past the janky sets and the bad CGI, then I still class Babylon 5 as the greatest sci-fi story ever told. Like, bar none.
Firefly.
Apart from Firefly, it's the greatest sci-fi story ever told.
It's all
No.
about Firefly.
Now, it's
Give me my serenity
Oh.
any day.
alright. I love Firefly, absolutely. That's a difficult one. Like, my favourite characters are still Londo and Jakar in Babylon 5, and I think as a story arc, Babylon 5 still wins. But no, you're right. Firefly is awesome and should never have been cancelled.
Saw a thing about that earlier, Jason. I'll believe it when I see it. Although I'm also scared to see it. I might just skip it.
Yeah. I do love the modern Battlestar Galactica. I say modern; it's not modern anymore.
I prefer the newest one over the older ones.
Yeah, I do. I never watched all of the oldest one, but
Give me original Lost in Space though.
yeah, and Battlestar Galactica, the Odama maneuver, dropping the Battlestar through a planetary atmosphere and jumping it is still the greatest thing I've ever seen in sci-fi. Like, I can't think of a single scene in sci-fi better than that. It was just amazing. And Starfleet Academy ripped it off in the latest episode, which annoyed me.
Wouldn't know I've watched it.
Yeah, but they've ripped off a lot of stuff from a lot of different things. So
Yes, a good chat.
yeah. Anyway, what were we doing anyway?
That's what we need to do on your 12-hour stream. Just
We do,
Chat about
yeah.
sci-fi.
Oh, that's cool. I shall have to try and dig that out. Oh, Warehouse 13. Wow, I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, I loved Warehouse 13.
Hmm.
Sliders.
Yeah, Sliders. That was pretty cool too. I think Sliders suffered from going on too long. A bit like X-Files. I think that kind of suffered from that a little bit too. I think that's what makes Babylon 5 so good. You know, it has a story, it has a beginning, middle, and end. It didn't go on too long. Yeah, the Adama maneuver. Amazing. Right, so what are we doing again? Oh, there. Got a really itchy nose tonight as well for some reason. Yeah, so for the tasks that we're raising, we need to break out and remove duplicates for each station, for which we've now created separate arrays. So yeah, I guess then we need a reference to that one. Hang on a minute. I just realised what I've done. So that actually, no, that's the array we're looping. And this is the new one we're raising, which isn't. That's not an array, because we're raising a new task. So we separate all of those out into their individual arrays. Then we take our incoming one, and I suppose we then want to know, yeah, what department this is. So in actual fact, we don't want a sequence there. We actually want a switch, because we only need to do this action if the incoming task is in that particular bridge station, which makes that easier. So we're not, so in terms of like CPU load, we're not having to do a lot of stuff on a big array. We're simply doing it on our cut down version of the array. So let's just give that some room a minute. So break that. And what we can actually do... No, we can't. Oh, yes, we can. Because if we have our helm task and sensors task there, we can in fact use our task enum rather than the string, because we're now dealing with that department specifically. So we can do our equals like that. And then we'll need to set that. Yeah, so if our task is matching, then we'll set matching orders, and that needs to be for each with break. So we'll break that. And then on completion, we will either add this new task to our overall list of bridge tasks. So grab that, grab that. So if matching is false, then we're simply going to add that. So I think we need to set up some reroutes here, so we're not sending pins all over the shop. I think we'll break that as well. Again, just to keep it tidier. And I'll collapse all this into a single node anyway, just to keep it neat, but that just makes sure that we have access to that data. So if there's no matching orders, then we are simply adding our bridge task like so. And if there is a matching order, then we won't do anything because it already is there. So it's either pending or it's assigned. Although I guess, yeah, so if we're raising a new order, we want to supersede the existing one. Which basically begs the question. Yeah, do we only want one at a time? Because having done this, if you tell the helm to go somewhere and they're off on their way, and then you give them another order to do something else, then you want them to not go back to the original thing afterwards, because you've given them a new order. So we don't want the old order still lingering in the system. So really, we should clear that out before we proceed. So in actual fact, it might be worthwhile grabbing our order type for our station, and then clearing out any existing order that's lingering around for that station, and then just creating the new one. Yeah, I think I will do that instead. But I shall do that later, because it is midnight and it is time for us to say adieu. I did come around fast, didn't it, tonight? Normally, I don't like ending the stream if we haven't got to the end of a system, but I know this is going to take at least another couple of hours, not 10 minutes, so we will call it quits for now. So, what did we achieve today?
About sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, we had a really good chat about sci-fi. We've got to the point where the command orders are now raising the tasks, the shipwide tasks, which is good, and they're also raising subtasks for the individual bridge stations. And we can set alert conditions using the radial menu now. So the system is progressing forwards, but we're getting to the point where the task management side of the game is looking pretty solid, which is good, because once that's polished and properly working in multiplayer, then that's it. We've got NPCs doing tasks across the whole ship, which is awesome. Can't think of anything else, can you?
I made 5 metahumans, only 195 to go.
Brilliant. So yeah, Claire made 5 new metahumans. Well done,
In
Claire.
4 hours.
Good job. He looks good.
Thanks.
Yeah, I trust him on my ship.
You don't have a choice.
No, true. Yeah, so what Claire's doing at the moment, outside of what I'm doing, is she's working on converting our existing character system over to metahumans, so that they're a lot nicer and less janky than using ALS. But also moving across to Epic's new motion matching and mover systems as well. And the nice thing about moving over to that is we also get to use mutable as well for things like character customization. So the new character system should both look better, perform better, be better in networking, and have much more flexible character customization as well. So it's just good across the board. So hopefully you get that running smoothly.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. But that will be on 5.7, and we're currently still on 5.6. And we can't move to 5.7 until I've ripped out a couple of plugins that we're using. So these are all things that are pending. Right, what day is it? It's Friday, isn't it? Nothing planned for Sunday, do we?
No.
No. So yeah, I'll see you all on Sunday. So have a great weekend, everyone, and I shall see you on Sunday stream. Bye for now.